Hello and welcome to Cafe DC. I'm Faiz Rahman. My guest today is Lisa Curtis, a very familiar name in Pakistan. She has served in Pakistan as an American diplomat in Islamabad, and now she is a scholar at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank
you for doing this for us. I know it's a very busy week. Pope is coming, and we are still trying to scramble with our commute plans, so to speak. So thank you very much for coming to our studios.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll start with the discussion with this current back and forth between the Afghan leadership and the Pakistan government. This tragic, terrorist attack took place in Peshawar Air Base, and right away the Pakistanis they blamed the Afghanistan, not exactly the government, but they say the attackers came from Afghanistan. The Afghans denied, and now they're saying they have a proof. So what's going on? How is going to play out in the backdrop of these expectations for the talks with the Taliban?
Yeah, well, this was just a horrific attack on Friday at the air base. Particularly when you read about the gunmen entering the mosque and gunning down people as they're saying their prayers in mosque. The world is disgusted by these types of attacks, and so our condolences, go out to Pakistan and particularly the Air Force, which the Air Force has been playing the leading role in fighting terrorists in the operations in North Waziristan. So this was a particularly devastating attack for the Pakistani Air Force. In terms of who perpetrated these attacks, the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, the TTP, has taken responsibility. Whether or not they came from bases in Afghanistan, I think that could be the case. But the Pakistan military has made clear they're not blaming the Afghan government, but perhaps they would like cooperation from the Afghan authorities in tracking the perpetrators. We saw this kind of cooperation between Pakistan and Afghanistan work well after the devastating attack last December on the military school in Peshawar, where the Afghan government actually handed over some TTP leaders that had been hiding out in Afghanistan. So hopefully the two sides will continue this kind of cooperation. Unfortunately, we've seen the rapprochement, the sort of tentative rapprochement we saw between Afghanistan and Pakistan, start to unravel over the last few weeks. As you know, President Ghani had bent over backwards. He had reached out to Pakistan. We started seeing some fruit from this rapprochement. We had the Taliban peace talks that took place in Murree over the summer. But unfortunately, when the news was announced that Mullah Omar had been dead for the last 2 years, the talks unraveled, and we saw attacks in Kabul, horrific truck bombings in Kabul, other attacks taking place, and the finger of suspicion fell on Pakistan.
Exactly. That's what I was wondering. But before I ask my next question, I did mention the Pope's visit. Our show is not live. By the time it will air, the Pope had come and would have left. So just a small note for my audience. Let's go back to our discussion. You see, something's happening in Pakistan, especially in the border areas, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and then something happens in Kabul or bordering areas, and both countries basically blame each other, and then both deny the allegations. So what's happening? Don't they have? Yes, in case of Kabul, we understand that the security situation is quite fractured. The government is still trying to take a firm control of the situation in the entire country, and a lot of people still say that they're pretty much confined to the areas near Kabul. So what's going on, and why can these governments control these elements?
Well, I think there's a lot of question about what kind of control Pakistan does have over the Taliban. I think Pakistan did use its influence with the Taliban when it brought Mullah Mansour for the talks in Murree. So I think if Pakistan is able to exercise its influence on the Taliban, nobody is saying the Taliban's a puppet of the Pakistan military, but certainly the Pakistan military has links, it has connection, it has ways to influence the Taliban leadership. So I think it's important for it to use that influence to bring the Taliban back to the negotiating table. You know, it's really incumbent, I think, on the Pakistan leadership to do everything in its power to try to make these talks with the Taliban.
And Pakistanis hate this basically. When you know, people go to Pakistan and say, okay, you have to do more, they believe that, you know, you're already doing so much, why we're being asked to do more on the same front. My question, Lisa, is do we doubt the sincerity of both governments, both Afghanistan and Pakistan? They somehow have these talks, they encourage all the parties to come close and talk these issues out. But on the other hand, they also somehow, quote unquote, sabotage these talks. Is it in their interest to do this, or is it something else?
I really don't doubt the sincerity of President Ghani. I think President Ghani is genuinely committed to trying to make a rapprochement with Pakistan work. With Pakistan, I don't doubt the sincerity of the fight against the TTP. You know, obviously, Pakistan has suffered greatly from attacks from the TTP, not only the civilians but the security forces, and as we saw just on Friday. So, you know, I would not want to underestimate the suffering that Pakistan has had at the hands of the TTP. When it comes to the Afghan Taliban, I think there are more questions, and we saw this in how the U.S. is reacting to the Haqqani network and the fact that the Haqqani network still has bases in Pakistan. And the U.S. Defense Secretary has recently told the U.S. Congress that he can't certify that the Haqqani network bases were impacted by Pakistan's operations in North Waziristan. So clearly the U.S. and Pakistan have divergent interests. The U.S. wants stability in Afghanistan, wants Pakistan to crack down on the Haqqani network, not just crack down on the TTP, but the Haqqani network, wants it to use its influence with the Afghan Taliban for a negotiating process. But, you know, I'm not sure what Pakistan's goals with Afghanistan are. Certainly, I don't think any Pakistani leader would want the Taliban to retake power in Afghanistan, because there would be a direct blowback against Pakistan. But at the same time, you don't see that same commitment to promoting stability in Afghanistan that I think U.S. leaders would like to see.
You brought up this coalition support fund issue, and the Pentagon basically, they did not certify, or they don't want to certify at this point for the next tranche to be released, that yes, the Pakistanis are actually going after the Haqqanis. But we see a split within the US government. A few days ago, I had John Carpenter from the SRAP office at the State Department, and he said his department actually supports the release of these funds, and I think it's a good idea. It's a good mechanism for the Pakistanis to take some good initiatives to, you know, establish peace in the region.
Yeah, I don't think it's surprising that there might be a split within the U.S. government about whether or not to provide this funding, because, you know, as I said before, we see these dual track policies in Pakistan. Certainly we see Pakistan cracking down on TTP terrorists and fighting that battle and taking attacks. And so I think that is, you know, the inclination where we want to support Pakistan. You know, we want to see Pakistan overcome its own terrorism problems. But then we also have the interest of seeing Afghanistan be stable and seeing President Ghani's efforts to reach out to Pakistan bear fruit. But it takes two hands to clap. And so I think that that's why you see the split in the U.S., because there is a desire to support Pakistan and partner with Pakistan, but there's also a desire to see the President Ghani's government succeed in tackling the Taliban within Afghanistan. And that's why we see these divergent policies. I think overall, the U.S. supports Pakistan. sees Pakistan as a partner in fighting terrorism, and we may see some movement toward the U.S. and Pakistan partnering against ISIS. My understanding is this may come up in the discussions when Nawaz Sharif visits next month. So there are many areas on which the U.S. and Pakistan are cooperating, will continue to cooperate. But when it comes to Afghanistan and the problems there, we don't seem to be on the exact page.
Pakistan actually has made it very clear, and they have announced both from the military side as the civilian side that they have gone after the Haqqanis with the full force. And you see this operation in the Shawwal area. I mean, there isn't much territory left for the Haqqanis to operate, at least in the North Waziristan area. And that's what the Pakistanis been saying. You see these attacks on Pakistani sites, strategic sites actually, when you talk about these air bases, even though it wasn't a functional air base, but still. So, but the West still doesn't believe that the Pakistanis are actually taking part in removing the Haqqanis. And what is it that they can do more?
Well, I think the West is looking at the level of violence in Afghanistan. And that is how it's gauging whether or not Pakistan is effectively addressing the Taliban Haqqani threat within its own territory. So I think that the fact that Pakistan did host these talks with the Taliban in Murree, that was very welcome. I think there was a lot of appreciation for the role that Pakistan played in bringing those talks together.
Then what happened?
Well,
who outed the Mullah Omar? The news about Mullah Omar's death.
Well, I don't know who outed the news, but frankly, personally, I would have a very hard time believing that the Pakistan military and ISI did not know that Mullah Omar had died 2 years ago. I just find that personally very hard to believe. So I don't know who outed the information, but I think we have to ask.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they have denied it, but I think that given the relationship, and again, I'm not saying they hold the Taliban like a puppet, but given that close relationship that Pakistan has with the Taliban, I just find it difficult to believe that they would not know that Mullah Omar had died 2 years ago. So why that information was kept from the U.S., I think that's a whole nother question that we have to answer.
Lisa, we have to take a very short break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about China's influence in the region, and also this planned massive investment in an economic corridor, which is going to go all the way to the Central Asia. So let's just wait for a few seconds, and please come back. Actually, don't go away. We'll be right back.
Now that the U.S. and NATO forces are withdrawing, I think China is genuinely worried about the future direction of that country. It's worried about the instability spilling over, particularly into Western China.
Welcome back. I'm Faiz Rahman and you're watching Cafe DC. Our guest today is Lisa Curtis from the Heritage Foundation. Welcome back, Lisa. Okay, so we were talking about Afghanistan and Pakistan, and almost the entire half of the program was devoted to this discussion. There's another very important part of the equation, which is China. China has been a player for a long time in the region, but now you see a lot of activity from them on their behalf, and actually they've been involved not just in economic affairs or economic interests in the region, but a lot of politics, international politics. Before, they were very reluctant to get involved in the regional matters, but now they also helped in the talks that you just alluded to, like the talks in Murree. They're also behind those talks. So how do you see the Chinese, why all of a sudden, first of all, they've been so interested in the geopolitical situation of the region, number one. Number two, do you think the other international powers are kind of, looking at this situation with some positive feeling? Yeah, it's good for the Chinese to get more involved in the region, and probably that would serve the region's interest better.
Yeah, I think you have seen more of a convergence of Chinese and U.S. interests in Afghanistan and Pakistan as well over the last few years. For many years, I think China saw Afghanistan as sort of the U.S. or the West or NATO's problem. But now that the U.S. and NATO forces are withdrawing, I think China is genuinely worried about the future direction of that country. It's worried about the instability spilling over, particularly into Western China. We've seen, some terrorist attacks. China blames Uyghur separatists for many of these attacks. We know that Uyghurs were, training in Afghanistan before the 9/11 attacks. So it's feasible that there would be support or linkages between some of the separatists fighting in China with groups located in Afghanistan or Pakistan's tribal areas. So China very much has an interest in seeing a stable Afghanistan and seeing the current government in Afghanistan being able to keep the Taliban at bay. So what we see is China and the U.S. are coordinating more, cooperating a little bit more in their efforts to see a stable Afghanistan. And I see the $46 billion investment that China has committed to Pakistan in terms of building up transportation links, road and rail links, infrastructure, energy projects. I think this is all part of the Chinese plan to encourage greater stability in Afghanistan and Pakistan. I think the Chinese see the relationship between stability in one country affects stability in the other, and they would like to support Pakistan and see more stability in Pakistan. Now, it also has to do with Chinese interest in asserting its overall influence and filling this desire to bring this maritime Silk Road into fruition, the OBOR project that they're, One Belt, One Road, they call it the OBOR project. That's also part of the Chinese plans. And I think that's why we see this focus on investing in Pakistan. But we also have to remember that the Chinese promise a lot of investment, and it doesn't always all come through. And the Chinese do pay attention to security. And if they begin to have security problems in Pakistan, I think we will see that some of this investment doesn't actually come through. So security is going to be a big part of if this investment actually moves forward. But I do think it's part of China's effort to help stabilize the region, which, as you said at the outset, is an overall positive, from the U.S. perspective.
Very good. Foreign Policy, the Foreign Policy magazine, they came out with this article over the weekend, actually last week, and the title of this article, China has a plan to take over Central Asia and America loves it. Written by John Hudson. A very interesting point here, Dan Feldman, who is now a former SRAP, when he was a deputy, or probably a full-fledged one in 2013, when he went to China, they wanted to talk about Pakistan and Afghanistan. But according to this article, the Chinese said, no Afghanistan, no Pakistan. We're just going to talk about America and the Chinese issues, nothing else. And fast forward 2015, now Afghanistan is a big part of their agenda. And you very eloquently basically elaborated everything. But my question is, something doesn't add up here. I mean, you see China investing $46 billion. Pakistanis are very happy. I mean, they have lots of expectations from this, because it will basically transform their country into a much more prosperous region. And it cannot happen, this investment cannot be successful if Afghanistan is not stable. So it's in their intrinsic interest, in the Pakistanis' interest, to make sure that Afghanistan is stabilized. And you see some of those signs, that the talks, the operation in Afghanistan. But there are other players as well in the region. So again, going back to the first part of our discussion, if it's not in Pakistan's interest to have instability in Afghanistan, then why it's happening?
Yeah, no, I think you raise an excellent point that, for the Chinese to accomplish what they want to accomplish in Afghanistan, more stability, keeping the Taliban at bay, they will also need Pakistan to be part of that goal, part of that effort, and to do what it can to crack down on the Taliban that's in Pakistan. So I think that eventually, even though in the past, I think the Chinese thought they could accomplish their goals in Afghanistan without impinging on Pakistan's interest, whatever that might be. And so they kept that very separate. And you saw in the 90s, side deals with the Taliban, make sure that the Uyghurs, are not allowed to operate. But it's different now. I think the Chinese recognize that in order to not have that instability in Afghanistan, they need to support the government. So they're supporting the Afghan government, the Afghan authorities, to the extent where they may support them militarily at some point. So again, this comes to, back to Pakistan, and you have this, historical relationship between China and Pakistan, but to what extent will the Chinese start to use their influence to bring Pakistan along with their goals for stabilizing Afghanistan? And this remains a question because, as the Chinese are changing their policy toward Afghanistan, we haven't necessarily seen a major shift in their policy toward Pakistan. We still see very much a supportive relationship. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes, but I would just repeat that eventually I think China is going to have to put more pressure on Pakistan to crack down on the Taliban if it really wants to see a stable Afghanistan.
America loves China's increasing role in the region, but what's your reading of the Indian policies in the region? Do you see any moves that may be of concern or maybe of help to the regional powers as well as to the Americans?
Well, this topic certainly is going to be discussed. Prime Minister Modi meets with President Obama next week, and I'm sure that the issue of Afghanistan and stability in the region, as well as Indo-Pak relations, will be discussed at this meeting. There's a great deal of concern about the direction of Indo-Pakistan relations. We were hoping that the National Security Advisors would have met last month. Of course, those talks were called off. Both sides can't seem to agree on the agenda. India wants to talk strictly about terrorism. Pakistan is insisting that Kashmir be part of the discussion. Meanwhile, you have the mastermind of the Mumbai attacks, Zakir Rahman Lakvi, walking free in Pakistan. That certainly doesn't help the atmosphere between India and Pakistan. But I'm not sure there's anything the U.S. can really do. The U.S. cannot mediate their disputes.
The Pakistanis say that he's alleged bomber, not the convict.
Oh, I think we have plenty of evidence to show his role, and the U.S. has this evidence. So I think it's very clear that Zakir Rahman Lakvi was involved in the Mumbai attacks from the U.S. perspective. And like I said, it's understandable that India is extremely frustrated with the current situation. And it's not helpful for Pakistan's internal situation. If Pakistan really is trying to crack down on terrorism, what signal does it send when you release a well-renowned terrorist back into society? What signal does that send to the rest of the terrorists and to the ideology that binds these different terrorist organizations together? It doesn't show a lot of seriousness.
Of course, it's a different topic, and from their perspective, they don't have enough evidence. The Indians or the Americans, they haven't given them enough evidence for them to convict him. But that's another. But again, going back to Cafe DC, Lisa, this is Cafe DC, so we have to have some lighter moments as well. You have served in Islamabad. So we just have a few minutes left. I just wanted to ask you about your experience in Pakistan, what it was like being in Pakistan. early in the 90s, I guess, right? In the 90s?
Yes, I was there 1994 to 96,
yes.
and I always say, you know, a month after I arrived, all of a sudden this group that nobody in the embassy, you know, had heard about or knew about, called the Taliban, was rolling into Kandahar, Afghanistan. So we were all scrambling to figure out who is this Taliban, you know, what are their goals. So anytime anybody says that the U.S. actually started the Taliban or had something to do with the creation of the Taliban, I say it's just not true. I was there when they rolled into Kandahar. But, you know, I enjoyed my time in Pakistan a great deal. You know, there wasn't a weekend that, you know, we weren't invited into another Pakistani's home. You know, very hospitable people, you know, very, very gratifying experience to be able to serve as a diplomat there. So I'm sad that it's gotten more dangerous. When I travel to Pakistan now, there's certainly more security. We could travel, we could go to Quetta, we could go to Peshawar.
In the 90s,
we could travel around. You know, I always tell the story. I went to Quetta alone, you know, as a woman, and, you know, was doing some reporting on women's issues in Baluchistan. You just couldn't do that now. So unfortunately, I think it's a lot less safe for Americans these days. But, you know, hopefully that this will change, and, you know, we'll be able to see a new era soon in Pakistan. I've noticed, you know, terrorism attacks are going down. I mean, certainly you don't want to understate the problem. It's still, you know, especially given Friday's attack by the TTP. But when you look at overall numbers, it does look like the trend is going in the right direction. So let's hope that, you know, we continue to see
hopefully
increased cooperation between the U.S. and Pakistan on this terrorism problem.
Lisa Curtis, thank you very much for being here.
Thank
Wonderful
you.
Conversation.
Thank you.
And hope to see you back. I mean, there's so much to talk about this region and these issues, and I mean, nobody is more qualified from a different perspective to talk about these issues than our own Lisa Curtis, based in Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching KVDC. Again, I'm Faiz Rahman. See you next week.